I'll just wait for a wee moment before everyone filters in. Okay, I'm just going to begin. So, hello and welcome everyone. Thank you for tuning in to this workflow talk hosted by Crafts Scotland. Just to introduce yourselves, I'm Murray, and myself and Soizig, along with Rachel Ashenden and Jemima Dansey-Wright, are part of the Crafts Scotland Emerging Curators programme. And we're really excited tonight to be joined by Vega Määttä Siltberg and also sorry, Matilda Dominique. And tonight, Vega and Matilda will be talking a little bit about their work and sharing an insight into their creative practices. And this will be followed by a panel discussion that will last about 20 to 30 minutes. After the panel discussion, we can open the floor to questions. So feel free as we go along to type your questions into the Q&A chat box at the bottom of the screen. And we can pick that up at the end. So just before we start, I just need to mention a few important points, which is that this webinar is going to be recorded and it's going to be published on the Crafts Scotland YouTube channel and also on the KHVC website. But it will just be the speakers that are going to be recorded and not the audience. So you don't need to worry about that. Also, automated captions are available at the bottom of the screen as well, and they're available in other languages if you need. So to begin, I'll just hand over to Soizig, who will talk maybe a bit more about the context to tonight's discussion and also a bit more about the workflow exhibition. So.
Hi everyone, thanks so much for joining us. I'm so delighted to have the opportunity to speak with you both again, Vega and Matilda. For context, this invitation and conversation stems from the Workflow exhibition, as Murray said, and its themes around escapism. Workflow is a Konsthantverkscentrum members exhibition which opened in February and is running until the 31st of August at the Swedish Crafts Centre in Stockholm. At the invitation of the Swedish Crafts Centre, Workflow was curated collaboratively by the Compass Curator cohorts, including myself and Murray, Rachel Ashenden and Jemima Dansey-Wright. We were particularly intrigued by the dual purpose of Konsthantverkscentrum as both a gallery where creativity is shared and an office where business is conducted. Workflow stages playful interventions to disrupt the boundaries between domesticity and work. Each room is transformed into an alluring portal of sorts, where the opportunity to explore or break away from the monotony of the working day is too tempting to ignore. Designed to spark curiosity and revel in our innate inquisitiveness, Workflow alludes to the creative flow state that can be accessed through the making process, instilling a sense of escapism and otherworldliness to an office environment. Every maker selected in the exhibition has a surreal quality to their work. And here you'll find that craft becomes an intervening force through interactivity and tactility. Exhibiting makers include Vega Määttä Siltberg, Baro Leven, Ulrika Bar and Christina Leven, Sissy Westerberg, Anna-Karin Ardvidsen, Margarita Pozzali, Clara Helm and August Sorensen. You can see more about their work on the Crafts Scotland website and of course the exhibition itself if you're lucky enough to be in Stockholm. Vega Määttä Siltberg's dyed textile installation, which we are lucky enough to see in the background here, the Shibori Room, is currently being exhibited as part of Workflow. Its placement at the window is intentional, an invitation to the passerby to come inside and investigate this whimsical tent-like object. I'm delighted to introduce Vega, who graduated in 2016 with a BA in textile art from Konsthantverkscentrum University of Arts, Crafts and Design in Stockholm. Vega creates woven art made of recycled material and material taken directly from nature. The materials have little or no economic value. Her work is a response to the modern pressure to consume all that is new by looking to what is already available to us. So I'm going to hand over to you now, Vega, to share more about your practice.
Thank you. I'm going to share my screen. Just a moment. Okay, I think you can see my presentation now.
Yeah, we can see it.
Yeah, I'm very happy to be part of this exhibition and this webinar also. And like you already said, I work mostly with repurposed materials. And yeah, I see it as a way of going against the modern pressure to consume everything that is new and looking at what's already available to us. I'm always on the lookout for different repurposed materials. And I try to keep a very open mind when I'm searching for different materials. To me, it really evokes my creativity to use these repurposed materials rather than new materials. So when I'm searching for different materials to use, I look at them both from like an aesthetic and a technical point of view, but also what I think that they symbolize. And I really think that these like secondhand materials usually carry a lot more symbolism than new materials. So in these two pictures here, you can see on the left side, there's like a big artwork that is made out of mainly reused plastic, but also mixed with a lot of other small like scraps of materials from previous projects. And when it's hanging, it really looks kind of stiff, but it actually has this really like textile quality to it that you can drape it. And on the right side, you can see a big artwork made in a technique called ria. And it's like traditional Swedish technique. And it's characterized by this really like fluffy, kind of hairy texture. And this technique is usually a very dense and like thick textile. But I have tried to make it like the opposite, more like feather-like, and that so that the light can sort of shine through it. And in that specific piece, I used a lot of repurposed textile from garments, mostly in polyester material that have this, they have a lot of like flower patterns and are very sheer. So yeah, and I don't have time to get into each piece that much, but in both of these pieces, the choice of materials carry a lot of symbolism for the artworks. And oh, it's a little bit hard to like stop on like one. Okay, there, good. So I do both works for like private homes, but I also do work for public spaces. And last year I started doing different community art projects. So in this, these two pictures are from a square in the very like center of Stockholm, where I did these two projects in the summer of last summer. And on the right side, you can see two girls that are participating in a weaving workshop on the square. In this weaving workshop, I let anyone who walked by the square take part and try this traditional weaving technique called RIA, and we only used repurposed materials. And I think it was very interesting experience to pop up on the square like that with like a textile craft workshop, because there are like 100,000 people actually passing the square every day, and a lot of them are not usually exposed to textile craft. And I thought it was really interesting how many people, to them, this technique and to do textile craft was kind of vaguely familiar, but very few people knew how to actually do the craft. And also a lot of people from different countries would come up and say, oh, we have a similar technique in my country, and I saw my grandmother doing it. So it was really nice that I could show these people how to do it themselves also. And on the picture on the left here, it's a type of rug or mat that are placed in the stairs. And on this square in the summer, they have a lot of performances. They build up a stage, and they invite different artists to have different performances. And I was asked to make these rugs for people to sit on while they watch these different performances. I realized also that they have this effect that as soon as I put them out, people come and like sit on them. They are really inviting to people. And I think that's like a quality that textiles have, that they can really draw people in this really public space. Yeah, so that was like very short about my practice in general. So now I will talk a bit more about the Shibori Room, if I can get there. This is really, I don't really know why it's doing this. Okay, now, good, stay there. So yeah, so in the pictures you can see the Shibori Room, the same room that I'm sitting in front of in this workflow exhibition. I made this 2016, so it was a while ago. I had just learned how to do this dyeing technique called Shibori. It's a Japanese technique. In this technique, you fold fabric, and you can tie ropes around it, or you can clamp wood to it to create patterns. And I was learning this technique, and I really liked how it's characterized by both control and chance. So you try to create this repeated pattern. But then especially if you're a little bit unexperienced making the technique, the water always leaves sort of unexpected marks in the pattern that I think really create a variation and depth that is nice. And at the same time that I was dyeing this fabric, I was also very inspired by how in the 1800s, people, like mostly rich people, had a lot of heavy draped textiles in their homes. And I thought I really wanted to make some kind of space out of draped fabric. So that's how this Shibori Room was made. And when I make different artworks, I usually don't really have a super clear like plan from the beginning how it's going to end up, and it was the same in this case. And the ideas about, or what the work is about, and the actual work itself are sort of formed parallel to each other. So when the work was finished and we had this big opening party at the school where there was a group exhibition with a lot of different artworks, I realized the function of the room, and at the exhibition, I was like standing next to the room, and a lot of people would come by and ask me about it. And then I could invite those people into the room, and we could stand there and have like a more focused conversation while this party was going on around us. I also realized that to me, this pattern that is both repetitive but also has some variations, it sort of creates like a focus that can be calming when you try to look at this pattern. And I think it's something that we as humans do. We try to look for patterns everywhere, maybe a bit subconsciously. And then when there is a pattern that both is repetitive and a little bit varied, you can't really help yourself but like focusing on it. And that can really have like a calming effect. So yeah, I really appreciated this function that the room had, that also for me, because I'm a little bit introverted, so it was really nice to be able to have like a conversation with just a few people inside of this small, a little bit closed space, but still be a part of the party that was going on around us. And now it's hanging here in the office space. So I think it could really have that function also in that kind of an environment, especially nowadays where there's a lot of like open office landscape where you don't really have your own desk or anything. I think it could be a really good idea to have more of this kind of art in those types of spaces. Yeah, so in one picture you can obviously see the room from a bit further away, and then on the other picture on the right you can see the ceiling when you're standing inside of the Shibori room. Yeah, thank you. I'm gonna stop sharing the screen now.
Thanks, Vega. That's really interesting. And I'll just move on to introduce Matilda Dominique. And Matilda graduated in 2009 with a bachelor's in fine arts in textile design from the Swedish School of Textiles. And in 2014, she graduated with an MFA in textiles in the expanded field from Konsthantverkscentrum University. Her work is often characterized by very structural woven pieces, which I'm sure she'll just go on to talk a bit more about just now. So hand over to you, Matilda.
All right, thank you so much. I'm going to hopefully share my screen. All right, can everyone see?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, thank you so much for that introduction, and thank you for inviting me also to this webinar. I'm really happy to be here. So I'm Matilda Dominique, a textile artist and weaver, and this is some of the things that Maria already presented to you, so I won't say so much more about it. Besides my own practice, I also teach. I have been teaching for quite a number of years, and right now I'm at Nyckelviksskolan in Stockholm, which is like a foundation year in arts and crafts. I'm going to start with just saying a few maybe more general words on my practice. So for a long time, I have been focusing my work on a specific weave structure called waffle weave, which is what you can see in these works. And one of my main interests around the technique has been the structure and also the weaving's relationship to architecture. And this focus has later led me to work with more spatial works with textiles, and recently also with the performance. And I will come back to this towards the end of my presentation. So for this presentation, for this webinar, I was asked to share with you a text, an essay that I wrote for the Scandinavian Weaving Magazine around 2 years ago. And the essay is called Memories of a Kitchen Towel. And it's written around texture versus structure, what texture does, reflections on 2 specific works through touching them, and how memories can be evoked by textiles, or how materials can store memories. So throughout my practice, I've been focusing on the structure of the weave, as I mentioned, and I haven't actually been so interested in or focusing so much on the texture, even though texture is always present in materials and textiles. And I was reflecting upon this and how texture is sort of a silent and individual communication between material and skin. When you touch a material, it's like a language of its own. And this language is, of course, also read differently by different people, depending on their experiences with materials and texture. So texture is what happens on the surface of a material, but it's not always visible to the eye. And texture can also tell us stories. And I especially like Annie Albert's writings on structure and texture. And this is a quote from her book on weaving. Structure as related to function needs our intellect to construct it, or analytically to decipher it. Matière, which is texture, what I've translated to texture, on the other hand, is mainly non-functional, non-utilitarian, and in that respect, like color, it cannot be experienced intellectually. It has to be approached just like color, non-analytically and receptively. And to try to understand texture a little bit better, to get closer to it, as I worked with my essay, I also wanted to reflect on some of my own works. And I made these reflections through my body and through touching the works and to be close to them with my skin. So I tried to approach my works with the help of Annie Albert's words to be non-analytical but receptive. And this work is called Complex Matter 1, this weaving. And I will read this short reflection to you. A rough, coarse surface, short fibers stick out like nails and itch my hands. A heavy linen warp sets the frame. The cotton and polyester weft is much smoother, but takes up less space. The weft threads pack tightly together, and I hardly notice them as I stroke my hand over the textile. There are 2 different patterns to be read in the weave. If I slowly move my hand over the surface, I can feel beyond the coarse yarn and find the pattern of the weave structure. Small, evenly spaced out bumps are what I feel beneath my fingertips. Every so often, a larger bump. Shadow weave, as the technique is called, is mainly a plain weave structure. Occasionally, when the pattern so requires, a thread floats over 2 warps instead of 1. A small but notable change. I open my eyes and take a look at the visual pattern in front of me. It's a bold design that creates an optical illusion, a completely different pattern from the one I feel through my hands. And the other work that I reflected on in this project is called Lush Lovikka. And this is an opposite to the previous work. It's soft and smooth against the skin. The texture is light, airy, and warm. I really want to emphasize the importance of air. Despite the large format of the weave, It's surprisingly lightweight. The air helps the threads to spread out, and when the piece is to be rolled up, the air is pressed out of the textile. The woolen yarn is full of air too. It's spun with air. The fibers still manage to glue themselves to one another. Nothing will fall apart. A visitor to one of my exhibitions once said about a similar piece, "I would like to wrap myself in it, wrap it around me like a plaid." Viewers seem to be able to read the texture without touching the material, as if previous experience of similar textiles are telling them something about my work. And this sort of ideas of storytelling, or how textures and materials can convey information, led me to another essay written by poet and author Burke Sahin. And she explores the memories and histories following her family's migration through textile objects that they've brought with them. So it could, for example, be unfinished embroideries or other sort of odd, maybe odd, seemingly odd textiles that to an untrained eye may seem like something strange to keep, but they become a key to unraveling untold stories of her relatives, as well as the materials themselves. And her, I want to say that her essay is written in Swedish to begin with, so I have this little quote I have translated myself to English. But it goes like this: "I began to imagine a language that could be felt, fiber and fingertips, beyond what was spoken and written. I understood that neither my mother nor my grandmother had access to education, and that they were some of the many women in the world who supported or still support themselves by sewing at home or in the factory. I understood that their works were often the only place where they could document their history and existence. Their names were not in the history books." And my own personal memories of textiles are from my grandmother mainly. She's the one of the reasons that I began weaving, and I also inherited her loom that I now work on in my studio. And this is my grandmother on the right, and my mother and sister behind the loom, helping her to set the warp up. And through all the woven objects that she has made and given to me and my siblings for birthdays and Christmases, her memories is very much kept alive. And from these reflections on texture and memories and storytelling, I want to take a little leap now and share with you two more recent works connected to something that I mentioned in the beginning of my talk. These works may not have to do so much about memories or touch, but rather about being inside of the weave or staying in the making. And first, I will share this work, which is a performance and installation that I did last year called "I Want the Weave to Become a Room," where I, in my exhibition, rebuilt the installation live in front of the visitors. And the textile is a 26-meter long hand-woven cloth in a mock lino technique. And it's hung over ropes in a wooden frame construction. And throughout the exhibition, it was myself together with another person who reworked the installation. So we practically wind down the ropes, which the cloth hangs on, and fold the textile and drape it and unroll it, and etc. And then rise the rope again, which built up another type of spatial construction. And the other work is a performance that I made earlier this May in Gothenburg. And it's called Collective Weave Choreography. And it consists of myself together with 20 other people who weave together in silence. And we did this performance outdoors and worked on sort of a type of backstrap loom, weaving with a rigid heddle. And many of us, as you can see in this picture, also share the same warp 2 and 2. So we weave from each side of the warp. And here's another view of that. That also became sort of an installation at that space. So with these two works, I've moved sort of my practice closer to maybe staying in the work or in the making rather than making objects, and also experimenting with what types of stories that can be evoked with large-scale spatial installations, and also including more hands, bodies, and minds than just my own. And this is my last slide, so I'll stop here. I just want to say that the full essay can be found on my website. And I think there might be a link in the chat. And also the Burkusahin essay, which is in Swedish. So if you're able to read it, there's also a link to that and these two last projects as well.
Thank you so much, Matilda and Vega. Just a note to everyone, apologies, the chat's not quite working, but we'll be sure to send and share links to Vega and Matilda's works and the exhibition following the webinar today. Thank you both so much, such amazing works, both of you. And I think it's really, really beautiful and striking how important communication seems to be to both of you, and creating and documenting and creating memories with people through your actual making processes, but also in terms of installation and performance. It's really beautiful. So I'd like to kick off with the first question for both of you. As you know, the title of the exhibition Workflow takes its name from being situated in a working space, the office of Konsthantverkscentrum, and simultaneously a gallery. It also takes its name from the concept of the creative flow state, an experience of total embodied engagement in creative or making activity. Would you say that the process of making is ever more important to you than the final outcome? Maybe start with you, Vega, on that one.
Yeah, I think it's, I wouldn't say that the process is more important than the actual like finished piece, but obviously like the way your process definitely affects like the outcome a lot. And I always try to, like I maybe mentioned before, I plan like a fair amount, but then I try to leave a lot of decision making for the actual weaving in the loom, so that a lot can happen while I'm actually weaving the piece or making the piece. It's mostly weaving nowadays. And I think that's like an interesting way of making art, because to me, so many things like happen along the way. And because I don't always have a very clear vision of what it's going to look like in the end, or what it means to me. A lot of those thoughts are like formed while I'm making.
Mm-hmm.
So what my process looks like is obviously very important for the finished piece, but yeah, still it's still very important what the end piece looks like and what it is. So I wouldn't say that it's more important.
Sure. I suppose it, as you said, it was interesting that the kind of idea sometimes forms as you're making in parallel to the actual making process.
Yeah, and also like with the weaving workshop on the square, where I make a big textile artwork together with a lot of other people. Obviously, like the workshop and like all the interactions with people, and that they are trying this. I mean, that's like the most important part. But at the same time, I really want the finished piece to. It's important that the finished piece exists afterwards, because I think it gives a lot of value that people can look at this piece after and know that I was part of making this, and I made this together with a lot of other people. So in that case, it's very important that there is also like a finished piece, and I take it down from the loom, and I really like prepare it so that it's completely finished in a really nice way. It's also like a way of like honoring the whole process, I think.
Absolutely, yeah. And Matilda, what would you say to that?
Yeah, I think for me, the process of making is probably more important, or the most important of my practice. More important than the outcome, I would say. I think I've always been really like interested in the process. And earlier, when I mostly made objects or sculptures, I tried to keep them quite open, so they wouldn't be maybe like I would hang them differently in exhibitions, you know, kind of I tried to keep working on them to continue them so they wouldn't finish. I don't know really why that is, but it's just something. And I think that is probably what has led me to experiment with performance as well, because that way it's like I can just keep working in the exhibitions or in a performance in a space. And as the last project that I showed you, the collective weave choreography, that was the first time that I did that specific performance, and I think I see it myself as not finished. I mean, I see it as something that is still in process, even though I made it there and I have photos of it and stuff like that. But yeah, maybe it's in a way like I try to look at the material that I make as a sort of raw material for new ideas also. And yeah. But I totally also agree with Vega that when you work, it's like all of these things happen, and it's important to also see the outcome. I don't know, I'm maybe a bit conflicted in this
But I
question.
think maybe that's what characterizes like doing some type of craft, that because it's like an endless sort of learning process, and you discover new things every time you do, even if you have done a certain technique many times. It's like this knowledge is always like building, and you always discover new things, and then it's like maybe hard to like put an end. Like if you finish your work, it's like, oh, but I have come up with so many new sort of ideas, or so that it's maybe that's why it's like hard to like finish something. But you can also like keep just like making many different pieces like after another, I guess.
Definitely.
That's so true. It's probably a horrible question to ask any artist, so actually forgive us for that one. Just a quick reminder to everyone watching, if you have any questions, feel free to start popping them in, and we'll come back to those after the conversation. And I'll hand over to you, Marie.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think as well having something at the end of making as well as a vessel to sort of show all the techniques that have gone into it as well are quite important. And I guess staying on that, I think listening to both of your how you work and your presentations, this idea of sort of the work evoking previous experiences or memories, or sort of embodying social histories of like knowledge passed down through techniques. It seems something that's important to both of your works, and I just wondered if it is something that you think about and influences how you approach making. I don't know
do you want to start again, Vega?
I thought you maybe could start because I felt like
okay,
because you talked a little bit about that, about your grandmother and how you were inspired.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. My grandmother was the reason I came in contact with weaving, but I don't think at that time or when I started like studying textiles, I didn't realize how important that connection was, I think. So it's maybe like through my practice and experience of making, and also through meeting an audience in exhibitions and reading and writing, I think this connection has become a lot stronger to my making practice and the importance of it. I've sort of, it's like when when I have an exhibition, for example, I usually don't have like a story I mean, I don't like it's like not like a strong story or something that I have with my works, because I start a lot from like the technical structure or the space or something like that. But the audience or people who come to the exhibition tell me a lot of stories when they see my work, that they sort of memories that they have, or things that they think about when seeing my work, which I think that is really interesting, like how a specific weave technique, for example, even though I scale it up. So this waffle weave technique is commonly used in like domestic textiles, for example, like dishcloths or something like that. And it's quite a tiny, small scale then, but I've enlarged it a lot and work in a lot of other materials, but still people really connected to their dishcloth, or to their towels that I mean, it's a way for people to relate to textiles, as also Vega was talking about when like people telling you stories that they've seen, that they recognize this technique. Or I think that's interesting what the textile can do, because everyone is so connected to it without maybe thinking about it so much in the daily life.
And it's a life beyond the finishing of that artwork as well, when you exhibit it and these stories come out from people that engage in the work.
And that makes me think and get new connections, kind of. And so
it feels like a lot of people who do textiles or weaving have a similar experience. I think that it's very like both like in a like good way, and sometimes people, because like people think that it's maybe not like a bad thing, but like your works are usually, people associate a lot to like domestic textiles, like textiles from household, and which is like, it's like a really good quality also with the textiles, that it really evokes those kinds of associations with people. But I think, I mean, it's like a tool also that you can use to really draw people in also. That people have this really close connection to textile.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I also think, as you mentioned, Vega, that it can be a bit double because
Yeah.
I mean, I've always been interested in architecture, for example, and sort of looked at weaving in that view and wanted to enhance that. And sometimes I could get really like annoyed at people for not seeing that, or you know, that
You
people
think about kitchen towels
yeah,
instead
exactly.
of
Like,
architecture. Yeah.
But I'm embracing that more.
Yeah, I mean, it's better. I think you will have more success if you try to embrace it. But also, like, yeah, obviously, it's like really great. I mean, it's like a great quality. Like when I did these projects on the square, for example, I mean, you can use exactly that to make people, like for the rugs on the stairs, for example, like people, and also that people immediately start using it, which is nice. That sometimes there is like no filter between like audience and then the textile piece. Like a lot of people really want to like touch it, and they feel I don't know, maybe it's different from like if you're hanging a painting on the wall, like you wouldn't like walk up to it and start like being super close and touching it. So it's like it's really great that people don't really have that filter when you have like a weaving workshop on the square or rugs that you want people to sit on, that they really feel invited to do that right away. It's sometimes it's like a really great thing.
Absolutely. It's such it's almost kind of like a very democratic medium, and that, you know, as you say, and as you've kind of documented in those beautiful texts, Matilda, it's something that essentially everyone inherits. You know, it could be a really domestic, regular textile, or it's also, as you're describing, Vega, something in a very public setting, people feel comfortable enough to come up and touch and take part, and you've obviously as well in those installations and kind of performative workshops made it really accessible and opened up these weaving processes so that people feel they can take part in it as well. It's beautiful. And I'll move on to another question for you. And we've both spoken about this separately, about writing as part of practice, and something which I think can be actually quite difficult for a lot of creatives and makers is writing about their work, and certainly something that I've found challenging in the past. As you said in a previous conversation, Vega, it is hard to do for a process without words. And I was thinking about your connection, Matilda, and how you feel your connection to writing has actually informed your making practice further. And separately for Vega, if you've ever found it frustrating having to define your work in words.
You want to start now, Vega?
Oh, should I start? Okay. Yeah. No, but I mean, it's very like it becomes very obvious, specifically when I'm trying to come up with titles for my works, because I always leave that to the very end, coming up with a good title. And I think that's always so hard because my process is so wordless. I feel that it's so much in the like hands and the materials, and it's very kind of like intuitive, and then sometimes like putting like a title in words feels like it's impossible to try to describe in one title, like what, yeah. But also like it feels very, I don't really like to put untitled either, so but I think Yeah, so I mean, I definitely find it a little bit frustrating, but also like I can really understand also the point in like I wish I was really good at like writing about my work, and maybe having, I guess that's something that you can like practice, and like you said, Matilda, also that it can really make, I mean, that also can make add something to the work, or like, yeah, sort of develop your ideas through writing. But yeah, I definitely find it a little bit frustrating because it feels like the words are like lacking something in comparison to this wordless process.
Definitely, titling is the worst, the worst task when it comes to the sort of finishing of a work. I suppose as you say, Vega, it's frustrating trying to maybe encapsulate something in words. Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, I mean, I also think it's quite hard with titles, but because it feels like a title should, I don't know, say so much or something. I don't know. It could set the make the setting for the work, but I want to. I mean, I quite enjoy writing, and I'm a person who likes writing to begin with, which I think obviously helps when you write, because it is hard. It's like it takes a lot of time, and it is something that also needs a lot of practice, like another type of craft almost, like to write. But I think and I don't write so much when I do my weaving practice, because like you said, Vega, it's another that then I need to be like in that, because that practice is its own. So writing has been more about maybe trying to understand what it is that I do, and reading. I try to read about other people's work, or so, but it has, the more I write, and and sort of also read, I can, of course, that helps me to put words on what I do, or what I think about when I make, or what I want my work to be about, or because I think it's, you and me, Vega, has been talking about this a little bit too, that we don't usually have when we make the work, it's not like we have a super clear idea what it is about, and that can come afterwards, and sometimes quite a long time afterwards. So it's like it helps me to put it in a context, or test a work in different contexts, and sort of see what it can be related to. And for in this essay that I wrote for the Scandinavian Weaving Magazine, I mean, the way that I sort of worked with my pieces, I usually don't write like that, I think, but it was interesting to like explore texture that way through my own works. But
Yeah, that makes sense. I suppose it's different parts, using different parts of your brain for each. So it makes sense. It sounds like you perhaps get into a kind of a flow in a period of weaving and making, and maybe intermittently in a bit of a flow with the writing process, and that unlocks the other part of your brain.
yeah,
I think so. Yeah, it's interesting. Thank you.
And I just want to ask as well about how do you embrace the unpredictableness as well in especially in the performative pieces, that I guess you're speaking about writing and developing ideas through writing, but as soon as you do a performance, there's that element of chaos, I guess, that can change your work as you go along. And I don't know, have you all each found that happening in your work? I don't know if Vega wants to speak on that.
Yeah. So I guess the one the workshop that I have done on the square, I mean, it's also, yeah, it's obviously like you can't control it like completely because there's so many people participating. So for like one of those pieces, for each one, I have made 4 of them now, and for each one there's like around 200 people participating in making each one. So there's a lot of different people making, but I still have like a lot of control over the process, because they come up to the workshop and then I show them exactly how to do this like special type of knot, and they mimic me exactly, and they do it. And I tried to make the whole the workshop so that, I mean, people they have the ability to like decide what material they want and things like that, and use a color they like and things like that. But it's still sort of like a controlled chaos. So I think, I mean, there's not so much of like an element of like that I don't really have control. I mean, I have quite a lot of control over that specific workshop. I don't know how it is in your workshops, Matilda.
Well, I think when I've done performances, it's I've sort of become more controlling because I can't, for either of those 2 that I showed you, I couldn't test it before I was actually on the spot. So that made me try to control it, like plan everything super, super tight. But it's still, a lot of things obviously happens that I can't predict. And also it's quite, I think it's also different to involve so many people. I feel like it's like I have a responsibility for the other people who are part of the performance, that they, I mean, are taken care of, or they know what's going to happen, or but I don't know, I think that's also something that could change with experience. Like the more I do this, I will probably figure out other ways, and yeah, we'll see.
Of course, thank you so much. So we've had a couple of questions come in the chat, and we've got a question for both of you with regards to the exhibition workflow. Did it, and if so, how did it make you look differently at your work that was included in the exhibition? And how do you think your work related to the other exhibits in the exhibition? And how did the collection of works speak to the exhibition theme? So I'll repeat that actually, and this will be for yourself, Vega, with regards to your work in the exhibition. So did it make you look differently at the Shibori Room, which was included? And how do you think it related to the other works in the exhibition?
Yeah, so yeah, it definitely made me look differently at my work. I think it was interesting that you chose this work because it's a few years old, so it was a long time ago that I made it. So I had to sort of like think about it and remind myself what I was thinking when I was making it actually, because I haven't thought about it in like a long time, and that I really appreciated that. And like I said before, I didn't really like, my goal was not to make like a calming space that can be part of a like an office space, and I hadn't really thought of it as a way of like escaping or so. I thought it's always super interesting to hear what other people can see in your work, so that was really interesting for me. But yeah, so that was interesting too. I already felt that it had some of those qualities, obviously, but it was interesting that someone else could see that also. Yeah, and how it relates to the other artworks in the exhibition. So I definitely think all of the works in the exhibition are very playful. I feel like that's maybe what I see is like the most common thing about the different artworks. Yeah, and I really appreciate that also, that you can have this really playful feeling, and it doesn't have to be very serious. You don't have to take the artworks like super seriously. I really appreciate that also.
Completely. It's really nice that you've taken that from it, and also that, as you say, it's a work from a while ago that you've been able to bring back out again. I think for all the introverts in the arts and crafts world, there's definitely a market for a pop-up Shibori rooms to bring to exhibition openings.
Yeah, I think, and it's great to like, if you can just like stand inside of your room. It's great. And people come in, you don't have to like approach anyone. You can just like stand there.
I really wish that I'd had that at art school for all the exhibition openings. That would have been ideal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
We have another question here as well, which says, it feels clear that there's a lot of bodily labor involved in the work and in their scale. Can you talk a bit about the importance of the impact of the body in relation to your practice? I don't know if Matilda, you want to start with this one?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, body is always present. I mean, as a weaver, it's also a tool, sort of, to use the body. And I think that is one of the reasons that I've also become interested in this backstrap weaving, and to weave together with a lot of bodies that can, like, together with the material, sort of create this installation that doesn't become permanent then, because it's also about movement and because it's human beings. We can't just stand there forever. So and also in relationship to like wanting to be in the process, I think that also has to do with the body sort of being present and to be in the work, sort of, with the entire body.
Yeah, I became more aware of like I guess the whole body's role in craft when I made this recent. I was part of like a community art project recently where I collaborated with 3 dancers in like a dance collective, so our task was to like combine textile craft and dance somehow. And we had like a series of workshops that for people like seniors. So it was this like senior center where they could come and take part in different activities. And then every Tuesday for, I don't know if it was like 5 weeks or 8 weeks, we had workshops where, so it was mostly dance workshops, but then I also came 2 or 3 times and we did like a textile workshop combined with dance. I had never tried anything like that before. It was super interesting to try to come up with something that included both of those art forms. But then I became aware, because I wanted, so my idea was that these older people were gonna make these big ropes using their bodies in sort of like a dance-like fashion, to try to combine textile and craft and dancing, and then I tried to make it in like a really big scale, so that you really had to use your whole body to create these like ropes together, and you had to be 3 people together to make these big ropes. So I thought it was interesting to try. So I took this like really simple textile technique of making like ropes, and then make it into a really large scale to like involve the body. But we also realized pretty quickly how much strength it takes to be able to do these different movements. Like you have to be able to use your hands really well, and you have to have balance, and most of these seniors everyone was over 70 years old. Most people were 80 years old or older. And it was, it was really interesting to do that type of project. So I guess that's like the project where I feel like the body has been most present.
Yeah.
That sounds incredible, super physical.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how have you both found actually that people have responded to these public participative textile workshops? Maybe Vega, you'd like to talk about this one particularly first.
Yeah, how people respond to the.
Yeah, how did you find that they took to it or didn't take to it maybe?
Yeah, I feel like in these different, so in the workshop on the square, I felt like a lot of people were very curious. So a lot of people would like stand and look at it from a little bit of a distance. And when I had to like approach them and like, oh, do you want to take part in the workshop? It's super easy. And then I feel like this, the textiles, and that it was very colorful, and it made it look kind of like it was inviting, and not like, it's not very like threatening, or like it doesn't look like something that will be difficult to do. So I feel like when I told them that it was like really easy and it only takes like a minute to do, most people really wanted to try it. And I have only had really like positive response to it. And also that a lot of people, they may be, and also like so many people from different backgrounds, different ages, both men and women. So a lot of like teenage boys, for example, would come up and they look a little bit like skeptical and ask like, oh, what are you doing here? And then I explained a little bit and asked like, oh, do you want to take part? And they're like, yeah. And then and then they actually stand there and like do the weaving.
Yeah.
So yeah, very positive. And also that it's familiar to people, but also very far away. Like almost no one knows how to do it anymore, but it's still familiar. It's interesting with weaving. It's like Many people did it like a few generations ago.
Sure.
And so it's still in people's memories, but no one really, very few people know how to actually do it.
That's true. That's really interesting. Matilda, how have you found that people have responded in your kind of installations and workshops?
Yeah, so I've had, so for this the last performance that I showed you, I made like an open call to collect people, and I really had no idea or no expectations that so many would be like interested to join. But there was quite a few people. It was over 30 people who responded to that, which it was really, blew my mind really that they wanted to take part in it. And then in the end, it was about 20 people who joined. And I think from the response that I've gotten, that it was really nice to, I mean, they were instructed beforehand. I had contact with them for like maybe a month and a half or 2 months before the performance, and we did a workshop together first. So I tried to prepare them for what was going to happen so that they would feel safe, or and also so that they would understand what I wanted them to do. But then in the performance, the instructions that they got was to just sort of, in relation to the workflow, actually, to just try to get into the flow of just weaving and just stand there and weaving in silence. And I think they enjoyed it. I mean, it was also like a really beautiful day, a sunny day outdoors, and to just stand there and be able to get into this practice, most people thought was really nice. I think almost like a meditative state.
Such a great activity to do on that scale outside, actually. It's really really nice.
I can imagine that it must have felt special also, that because they had like a connecting warp between them and one other person. I mean, they were like standing far away from each other, but still you must feel, I mean, and also you have to collaborate because you have to keep the warp like
tension.
Yeah, exactly. So I can imagine that creates sort of like an interesting feeling also to do that in connection to someone else.
Yeah, I think so.
And did they know each other before doing the performance?
No, I mean,
afterwards, if they ended up, I don't know, getting to know each other because of the performance, as you say, being connected to each other.
I mean, beforehand, I mean, there was a few people who were like, yes, it's me and my friend, and things like that. But then when we met on that day, it turned out that a few people actually had met before, and then which was nice. And I think that people were connecting, and I mean, I don't know in what scale they connected, or like how much, but definitely shared. I mean, for some, because it was also really different levels of knowledge from beforehand. Like some people had never woven before, and some people have been studying textiles, or work with textiles and weaving. So it was really different. How much they had on beforehand. So, but I think, I don't know actually how much they now are connected to one another, but maybe I should take that up and connect again or something.
I suppose that's something you've done as well in the reading circle that you started at the Craft Centre, Matilda, which is really lovely. Maybe you could tell us a bit more about that and how that experience of bringing people together around craft writing has been.
Yeah, I mean, it was Konsthantverkscentrum who asked me if I wanted to do a reading circle, and it's been really lovely. We met 4 times this spring, so about once a month, and about 10 people who joined, because that was the capacity of the space. And then I decided on beforehand the texts that we would all read, and then we met and just talked, and it was really really nice because it was people from different disciplines, so not only textile people but people who work in metal or ceramics, or so it was great actually to connect with other people in crafts, because I think most people work so lonely. I mean, they have their own working space. Some people share studio, but still you're kind of always in your own head. And
absolutely.
It was just a really nice way to meet and like continue to meet the same people as well, because then the conversation could grow and continue. And I think I felt like that was really, I mean, the texts were important, but more as a sort of material to get together. It could probably have been almost any texts that we read, because it was more about the connecting, I think.
Wonderful, thank you.
I just want to ask if anyone else has any questions to write them in the Q&A section. I have maybe one other question maybe we didn't get to, which is maybe, it's more about maybe because I come from an architecture background, I'm quite interested in it, how you both use textiles in quite a space-making way, and in quite a structural way, and especially in the Shibori Room, and also in the I Want the Weave to Become a Room piece. So I just wondered how what draws you to making and using textiles in that way of space making? Because it is quite unusual, I guess. I don't know who wants to start.
You want to start, Vega?
Yeah. That's like a little bit, I haven't really reflected on it a lot, like the space making, because I think that's like, yeah, I made the Shibori Room like a few years ago, and then I haven't really made that type of like spatial textiles until very recently, when I took part in these or I made these different projects on the square. So it was more like I was given the opportunity to make textiles for a public space. And that's how I got into it. So it wasn't like very something that I set my mind on doing, like, and then I did it. But I think it's really interesting what came out of those projects, because also like this square Sergels torg in the center of Stockholm is a square that has been, it's like not a very friendly like environment. There's like a lot of drug dealing and things going on there, and not many people feel like it's a very like inviting space. But then there's this organization that has tried to like make it into like a more inviting space for everyone for a few years now, and that they invited me and other artists to do different projects on the square to help create that type of environment. And I thought about that, like after I had made the workshop on the square for a few days, I really felt like the square was almost like my backyard. Like it felt so like I had like a really it was like, of course I'm gonna be here and like take up all of this space. Like it felt like my emotions towards this square had like changed completely, because yeah, I was standing there with my workshop and just like relating to a lot of people that passed by. So, and I hope that it had that effect on the people that walked by also, because there's people just passing the square just to go to the subway, and they wouldn't have thought about like staying on the square and actually spend some time there. So I really hope that the fact that they took part in the workshop also made the square feel like a space that where they can be, that they also felt like that. Yeah.
And Matilda?
Yeah, I mean, for me, the connection between weaving and architecture and space is something that I've been interested in since my MFA studies, I think. When I began weaving, I quite quickly like connected the making of cloths to building, just kind of a smaller scale in a way. And when I've been scaling up and working with entire spaces, for example, in the performance and installations, my hope, or I've kind of always also wanted to invite people into the weave in a way, like to be under it or walk in between or be inside of it, and that kind of share that experience of weaving, or and also like I mean, historically textiles and weaving has also been used as building materials. I mean, tents or more primitive housing, but also contemporary architecture and research into fiber and textile techniques for architecture is happening, and I think that is important or interesting, and yeah, I don't know. I also like the connection. I kind of also like to take this really common material and technique that people use in their homes and don't think so much about, and kind of take it out into another context, a bigger space in a way.
And you view things differently, and when you change the context around them as well.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting. I don't see that we have any more questions. So I'm not sure if you have anything, Soizig, or we can wrap up.
Just to say thank you so much, both of you. It's just been such a pleasure to speak with you and to learn more about your practices. And to everyone who's joined us, thank you so much. You can follow Vega and Matilda's work online, and as we mentioned before, Craft Scotland will be sure to share the links to everyone's work following the chat today.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Yeah.